Hey everybody! I don't have a remote for this camera. This is Crafty Sue, and there are sewing machine repairs and there are sewing machine repairs. And the one thing I can't stand is having a sewing machine that does not have the extension table attached to it. Hopefully the acoustics are not bad. This is our garage, and I've made a bunch of mess with a bunch of sawdust. But it's been all for a worthy cause. I have this beautiful Babylock 1550 model, and the only thing that's not beautiful is she's missing her free arm extension bed. And I'm going to have to dust her off because she's been out here being very patient with me. I had an old table, an old table that had two leaves on the end of it. Solid wood, good old wood. Smells great when it's burning, by the way. And that's what it does when you drill too long into it burns. So I knew that I needed some shelves to put into a closet, and then I got this little sweetheart right here, and I looked and looked all over the place for the extension table that goes to this Babylock, and could not find one. Reason why I couldn't find one, they've been discontinued, just like a lot of old vintage sewing machines happens. People move from here to there, they lose foot pedals, you have to replace a foot pedal. They lose the extension tables, they have to replace those, and different other things that happen over time. So, back in the early 70s, early to mid 70s, there was a lot of things that girls were not allowed to do. One of them was auto shop, at least in my school, and my high school. So when it came to my senior year, that's when the National Organization of Women came about, and women's liberation, and it was like, we can do anything guys can do. That was a big deal in the 72 to 75 era. That's when I was in high school. And so we couldn't take auto shop. I have no idea why. I would think wood shop would be a little bit more dangerous with the kinds of tools that we use. But myself and two other girls were brave enough to take wood shop. And when I got this Babylock and I saw that she was missing her extension table, my first thought was, I can make one. I can make it out of some good wood, paint it white to match her, and yeah, I call them her. I don't know why, I just think they're girls. But, well, she's got pink. You know, pink's a girl color. And I thought to myself, I'll just make one. Get out the power tools and make one out of that wooden leaf that I was going to make shelves out of. I still have enough of it left to make shelves out of it. My husband has the sawhorses. A lot of those kind of things, they're his. I have my own power tools now. Ha ha ha. He doesn't know. But, so I took over the garage tonight. He's out working. So I can make the extension table for little Miss Babylock here, because there's a lady who wants to adopt my Babylock. Yeah, isn't that sweet? I found a new forever home for my little Babylock here. Yeah, I got such a large collection that I'm having to adopt some out. And that's okay, as long as they know how to take care of them, because if they don't take care of them, I'm going to come after them. Anyway, not really. So I used an old battery that was out here and put it on top of the wood shelf. And I'd show you, but I don't have, there's not a way that I can kind of like zoom in because of the layout here. But the tools that I used were very simple ones, as a matter of fact. This good old Dremel 3000. It has one of these little tips. I call it the digger tip, and I used it to dig out in the part of the extension table form the spot for this little lip that normally the real piece would snap into it. This way it just it literally just sits on it, and I dug it out, and I'm going to show you all that. I'll come up close to show you that stuff. But now I thought I was going to need a hammer. Instead, I switched to wood screws, and there's a reason why. A lot of times when you don't know the grain of the wood that you're cutting, and I'm talking wood shop, so if the guys are in the room, tell them, come here. Say, watch this girl that sews. She makes stuff out of wood. Yes, I do. I do lots of things. So that handy dandy rechargeable battery drill, that comes in handy for drilling up the holes. And of course the piece of wood. But the very first thing you must do if you're going to make a replacement extension table for your sewing machine is you have to make a template, or at least take measurements and sketch yourself out a little, guide. I didn't have a piece of paper, except for a piece of newspaper. So I took a piece of newspaper, I got a pen, and I got my trusty little measuring tape for taking measurements for making clothes. That's the sewing part. And there's an old rule in woodshop. Measure twice, cut once. It's the same thing when I talk about on patterns. Read the pattern twice. You might need to read it a third time. First time is to get familiar with how everything's going to be laid out. Second time is to start to absorb it. A third time is good because you're actually reading it as you're making. At least that's how I've always done. So to get an idea of what this piece looked like, even though it's no longer being made, you can still find pictures of this Babylock sewing machine where it has the original extension table on it. What's interesting about this particular one, most of your extension tables start from the front and wrap around and go to the back. This one, it stops right here. It's a backwards L, or elbow. So that made this one a lot easier to make in the sense of measurements and all that sort of thing. But there's a lot of measurements you have to take. If you do your template, what you would do is put a piece of paper under it and then sketch out this outline of that top edge. Well, it's actually going to be at the bottom on your paper, and you're going to sketch that out to get that shape, the inside part. Then you're going to take, you can take any straight edge, or you can even take this, and you're going to take, not that end, so you have your sketch out of the cutout part. Now you need the outside edge part. So with your paper down there, you're going to take where it stops and take that and measure it and have something else go perpendicular out this way from the front to meet this line right here. So that way you'll know how far it is from this outside edge to this outside edge. The next measurement, since it's an extension table, you do not need to know height. You don't, because it's snapping into the top part anyway. The only time you would need to know height is if you're going to add legs to it. But we're not doing legs. We're just doing the pegs. Peg, actually. One peg. It'll work. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. Okay. Then you're going to, this measurement on the inside, right here, should match the outside measurement within 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Because sometimes it'll angle in. I wouldn't worry about the angle because all you're wanting is extra table space to be able to put the fabric on top. In the photos that I've seen of the actual original, this piece on the outside only came out about 1 inch. I added 1 inch. Why? Because I don't know if the lady who's getting this sewing machine from me is going to do quilting or not. If I give her an extra inch, that's more quilting space she's going to have. And I've gotten back into quilting just because I have this new system, and I'll have to share it with that with some more. The AccuQuilt system. So the measurements you need. This length, which should be the exact same as the outside. The next thing you're going to need is the width from the inside part of the tabletop of this to this here. And in order to get this space, you just measure from here, where it's solid, and this is 2 7/8. So 2 7/8, this is 7 inches. I'm adding 2 inches. So it's going to be 9 inches. And the cool thing about the shelf that I used, one edge is rounded off. So this is rounded off. And this works great for rounded off. Because the original table extension is rounded off. And that was perfect. Now I had to remember when I traced the pattern for this out on the wood, I actually did it upside down. So I had to remember when I go to put this on the machine, it's going the other way. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're sketching it out. If you're going to cut it out that way, or if you're cutting it out from the bottom side up, I cut it out from the bottom side up. So that way I knew where the side that's not going to need as much, as much sanding or whatever for it. Measurements this way. 7 inches plus 2 makes 9. The curve, I do not have to do a Dremel, or not Dremel, the router. If you want to round something off and you're doing woodworking like this, you do need a router. The routers are great. I need to get router bits for my Dremel actually, so that you can make a nice smooth. It almost sands it for you when you use a router to do curves. And then the other measurement that you need is from here to here, where that backside L piece is going to actually slide on. It slides on. The original, it snaps in. You could hear it snap because it was plastic. This is wood. Don't need to snap anything. You just have to have a hole dug out to be able to slip it on and stick a peg in there, in the one hole. The other measurement, do not forget, you want to measure this snap-on piece. How wide is it? How deep is it? Because that will determine where and how deep you're going to cut out inside that piece of wood to be able to slide it right on there. The peg hole back here. I can tell you, they may not be able to put a square peg in a round hole, but I could put a rectangle in there. I did it. I figured with that, it would be a little bit more snug, more secure, less apt to wiggle around while it's being sewn on. That's just was my theory. It actually works. It worked out really well. Scrap piece of wood. Do not use a 1/4 inch. It's not sturdy enough. Do not use 1 1/2 inch. It is too thick, too heavy. So think of sewing. What is the generic seam on anything that you sew in clothes? 5/8 inch. Perfect depth, perfect strength for an extension table made out of wood. Now the only thing is, like I said, with wood, you don't know how the grain runs and you don't know how strong it is. Well, this had a weak spot. And the weak spot caused this piece that originally was, let me get this on here right, which was originally shaped like this long, it broke. I took the circular saws and circular saw, that noisy thing with a big round blade on it. It's this thing. One of these guys. It's not a lightweight, by the way. And I needed something quick to cut through it. I was not going to use a handsaw or anything like that. A handsaw probably wouldn't have broke it. But it's not too late for this. What I did is I took that piece and I laid it back down next to it on the fake sawhorse table. And I'm going to come a little closer so you can see. I took another piece from that same leaf, this little piece right here, and what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to anchor where it broke. Now I could use wood glue or super glue, but knowing how wood can be, because wood does swell and contract with the changes in temperature, I chose to use the wood block on the bottom of it because it's not going to be seen. And whenever you have to get to the bobbin casing on this, you take the extension table off anyway. So it's not going to be an obstruction. And it's going to give a lot more strength to this while it's in there. So I'm taking a block of the same wood that I cut off the end. And I'm going to take 2 wood screws, which I've made pilot holes with the small drill bit from the Dremel drill, and screw that into there. Now, the rectangular peg in the round hole. I had a shim, and if you don't know what a shim is, it's a piece of wood that's used to wedge up under different things. Windowsills is a typical, doorways when they're leveling your doors, when they're installing doors. Yeah, I used to get called Mrs. Vila because I know a lot about woodworking and building stuff. I can't help myself. I just do a little bit of everything. And so for this part, when you're doing your measurements, there's actually 2 for this so-called peg hole that you need to do. You need to measure from that inside corner to the center of where that peg would have gone, or is going to go in this case. To the center, and also to the center vertically and horizontally. So when you put this up against there, it's going to line up perfectly. So the way I did with this, and it was actually a blessing in disguise that this broke, because now this piece is smaller and it's easier to do. I don't have to have this hanging halfway off the table to do this. I could take this little piece where it was going to go and literally put it on top, right above where it goes, and then line it up that way, and then do it like this. And well, you can't really do it on that, but you can line up this one this way, and then from below you can do it. It doesn't have to be exact. It just has to be in that ballpark to where for you to insert a peg into this that goes into the machine as well, it's going to have enough strength and enough depth. The way I gauged the depth for this used to be a shim, and I took the little sanding wheel on the Dremel and just softened it around, because I thought I'll make it round when I go. Why? I can put, as long as this isn't a rectangle that's wider than the hole, it'll fit. Same way with squares. You can put a square in a round hole. And what I did was I put the wooden piece in here, and I went and see how far it will go. Well, it goes pretty far. Well, I only need to go halfway, about halfway. Whatever this width is like 2.5 inches, I think. It's about 2.5 inches. And all I need is about 1.25 inches to go in there. For the mere fact is you want half of the peg when it's homemade. Now the piece that came with it, I believe the peg was maybe about 1 inch long. So it's close. It may have been shorter. I don't know, because they don't make them anymore. So I put this in that hole and measured it halfway, and I put a pen mark on there. So that way when I went to drill this hole and this end piece, if I put it in the hole and it didn't go to that line, I had to drill some more. You want as much strength in that peg as possible. So this one's a little shy of it, but that's all right because it's snug. And I can put this right in here, just like this. And when this is hooked together, this is going to be just like this. Yeah. And so what I'm going to have to do with this piece here, because when I first initially measured it, this was, butt against it. But now that I've done the digging out, this is going to have to be shortened just a little bit. And it's about 1/2 inch. So on this, I'm going to have to cut off about 1/2 inch on this other end. And when I do that, I'm going to use this to connect the two pieces, the two broken pieces, just like that. And once that is done, this is going to fit on there. The other part I didn't tell you about, or show you just yet, is a hole for this snap-on piece. Now, think about, here comes the country girl at me. Think about a mud wasp. A mud wasp makes a hole inside of mud, and it's formed. So you can do a couple different, you can do some real creative things to figure out how to do this hole. You can take some modeling clay, put it around there, and before it's totally dry, pull it off, let it dry, and then use that as your template for the hole in your wood. I eyeballed it. That's the other measurements you need. You need from the outside to the beginning of that peg, clip-on peg, and the same thing in the front. Then the other thing is you want to know how high it is and how far out it comes. This hole is deeper than what this is here for one main reason. It has to go around this corner, and when you're making a homemade one, that plays a factor in it. I don't know why, it just does. So once this is done, and I will come back with the finished product before I ship it off. This is going to be painted white, and this right here is going to be connected with this piece, and it's actually going to sit just like that, just as if it was supposed to be with it, except it's wood and it's not plastic, and you can't beat wood. And the thing is, if it does expand and contract some, it's not going to hurt a thing. I know this is a little different from what you're used to seeing. It's kind of a sewing machine repair, sorta. It's more of a accessory repair, I guess, or a body part, sewing machine body part repair. It's actually a replacement. The lucite ones, if you like them, get one. But when you do, you'll need all these measurements that I just went through. To make one, you also need to order one. Those clear lucite, whatever they're made out of, acrylic, and that you definitely need those because they have some weird measurements. They may have some gaps in it. At least when you make it out of wood, you can get exactly to fit it, and that's why I chose to do it this way. Not only that, gave me a good excuse to get out some power tools. Yay! But this is one of those things that brings joy. Yeah, to find your joy, you create. And when you create, that's when you want to do nothing except keep doing sewing. Have a great Christmas, everyone.